My boyfriend secretly had a baby with his ex, then brought him home and expected me to be his mom. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 29 years old. I own a small townhouse outside Columbus, Ohio. It isn't fancy, but it's mine. My late grandfather helped with the down payment, and years of saving from my job as a senior HVAC project coordinator let me pay off the mortgage early. I always imagined it would be the home where I'd build a family. 3 years ago, I met Ethan Carter at a neighborhood fundraiser. He was warm, funny, and effortlessly easy to trust. A year later, he moved in, and for a long time, our life together felt exactly like the future I'd always wanted. We spent lazy Sunday mornings making pancakes, ordered takeout every Friday night, and laughed whenever friends teased us about getting engaged. Ethan would just smile and say, "Soon, I want to do it right." I believed him. Looking back, what hurts isn't just that he lied. It's that I never saw a reason to question him. "Everything okay?" I'd ask whenever I caught him slipping outside to answer another phone call. "Just work," he'd reply without hesitation. At first, I believed him. Then the excuses changed. He started disappearing most Saturday afternoons, claiming he was helping a sick aunt who didn't like visitors. I offered to come along more than once, but he always smiled and found another reason for me to stay home. Every explanation sounded reasonable, and because I trusted him, I never pushed. Looking back, I ignored more warning signs than I cared to admit. He grew strangely quiet whenever I mentioned engagement rings or our future together. And one evening, I found him staring into the empty room we'd planned to turn into a home office. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. He blinked as if I'd interrupted something. "Nothing, just tired." He kissed my forehead, and I accepted the answer without another thought. I only realized much later that he hadn't been picturing our future at all. Everything unraveled on a rainy Thursday evening. When I pulled into the driveway, Ethan's truck was already there. What caught my attention wasn't his truck. It was the infant car seat sitting beside the front door. I assumed he was helping a relative. Instead, I walked into the living room and found him sitting quietly on the couch with a sleeping newborn in his arms. "I didn't know your sister needed help today," I said. His expression didn't change. "Claire!" A knot formed in my stomach. "Whose baby is that?" He swallowed hard before answering. "My son." The grocery bag slipped from my hand, and an orange rolled across the floor. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "My son," he repeated. I laughed in disbelief. "Okay, whose baby is it really?" He carefully placed the baby in a bassinet before meeting my eyes. "His name is Noah." I asked whose baby he is. After a long silence, he finally admitted, "Olivia gave birth 3 weeks ago." Everything inside me went cold. Olivia, his ex-girlfriend. The woman he'd insisted was completely out of his life. "No," I whispered. "It's complicated." "No, it's not. I can explain." "You told me you hadn't spoken to her in years." "I hadn't, until—" I couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. The hesitation alone told me there was far more to this story than he'd admitted. "When did it happen?" "Before things got serious between us," he said quietly. "It only happened once. Don't try to make that sound better than it is." "I didn't know she was pregnant." "But you knew eventually." He nodded. "She contacted me 8 months ago. We never got back together. Every conversation after that was about the pregnancy." The answer hollowed me out. For 8 months he'd kissed me goodbye, talked about vacations, looked at engagement rings, and planned a future with me while secretly preparing for a child with someone else. "I was scared," he whispered. "So you chose to lie." "I hoped she'd keep the baby." "And when she didn't?" "She left him with me this morning." I looked at the sleeping newborn. "So you brought him here." "I didn't know where else to go," he admitted, before adding, almost hopefully, "I thought we'd figure it out together." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Noah was innocent, but Ethan had already decided my future without asking me once. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 in the morning, his phone lit up with a message from Olivia. "She still doesn't know you knew about the pregnancy all this time, does she?" My stomach dropped. Months of messages about appointments, hospital visits, money transfers, and the pregnancy left no room for doubt. By sunrise, I knew there was nothing left to save. When Ethan walked into the kitchen, I slid his phone across the table. "I know everything." He stared at the screen before quietly saying, "I was going to tell you." "When?" "After Noah started kindergarten." And buried his face in his hands. "I didn't know how." "You had 8 months." "I hoped Olivia would change her mind. I thought once you met Noah, you thought I'd raise him. He needs a mother." "He has one." "She abandoned him." "That doesn't make me responsible." I tried to frame it as love. "We've built a life together. You built two. He flinched, but didn't deny it. I asked one question after another. When you talked about proposing, did you already know? Yes. Christmas with my parents? Yes. Our trip to Colorado? Another quiet yes. His silence confirmed what I already knew. Every promise he'd made had been built on a lie. I never stopped loving you, he said. You just expected me to ignore your son. I was trying to protect us. No, you were protecting yourself. His frustration finally surfaced. Noah didn't ask for this. How can you walk away from him? This isn't about Noah, I said. It's about you making life-changing decisions for both of us without ever asking what I wanted. I thought you'd understand. You never gave me the chance. Then he said the one thing that raised any lingering doubt. A real woman wouldn't punish a baby for his parents' mistakes. I almost laughed. A real relationship is built on honesty, not guilt. Han insisted love meant accepting Noah. I told him love also required choice, and mine had been taken away the moment he decided I'd become someone else's replacement. Then I ended the conversation. This townhouse belongs to me, I said. My name is the only one on the deed. His expression shifted from confusion to panic. What are you saying? You have 30 days to move out. He stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. I have nowhere to go. You should have thought about that before hiding a child from me for 8 months. He begged me to reconsider, promising we'd work through it, but I was already done. That afternoon, I met with an attorney and began the formal process to have him removed from my home. Because Ethan wasn't on the deed, had never paid the mortgage, and had no ownership interest in the property, the process was straightforward. My lawyer drafted a formal 30-day notice to vacate, ensuring everything complied with state law. When I returned home, Ethan was sitting exactly where I'd left him. The envelope in my hand immediately caught his attention. What is that? I placed it on the coffee table. Your formal notice. He stared at it without touching it. You actually hired a lawyer? Yes. You planned this already? I spent all night thinking. Hein looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at me. My parents will never let this happen. I thought about every lie Ethan had told and every message he'd hidden. Then I remembered something even more important. His parents still believed he was the honest, dependable son they'd always been proud of. Maybe they deserved to know the truth, I said. The color drained from his face. I didn't send the email right away. Once I did, there would be no taking it back, so I spent nearly an hour reviewing it with my attorney. It contained nothing but facts. A timeline, screenshots proving Ethan had known about Olivia's pregnancy for 8 months, records of the money he'd sent her, and the messages showing he intended to keep everything hidden until it was too late for me to walk away. I ended it with one sentence. I believe you deserve to know the truth before hearing another version of this story. Then I hit send. By the time I got home, Ethan already knew. You sent it, he said quietly. I nodded. A moment later, his father called. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. Ethan's repeated apologies, desperate explanations, and finally the silence after the call told me everything. Within minutes, every attempt to reach his parents and siblings went unanswered. They blocked me, he said in disbelief. You had 8 months to tell them yourself. They don't understand. They understand enough. Hein looked at me helplessly. They think I'm a terrible person. Were they wrong? Hein had no answer. That night, he admitted his parents had refused to let him move back home and told him to face the consequences of his choices. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, until he quietly muttered that they still should have helped. I looked at him in disbelief. So this is still someone else's fault? He lowered his eyes without answering. The next morning, reality hit harder. From the guest room, I listened as he called friend after friend looking for somewhere to stay. Everyone gave the same answer. No one was willing to take in a man with a newborn, and by evening his confidence had completely disappeared. Later that night, I overheard him arguing with Olivia. You can't just leave, he pleaded. He's your son too. The conversation ended with another shock. Olivia had already left Ohio and refused to say where she was going. When Ethan came back inside, he looked exhausted. She's gone. I wasn't surprised. So now you know what it feels like, I said quietly. To have someone make a life-changing decision without asking the person who has to live with it. For once, he had nothing to say. The following days settled into an uneasy silence. We barely spoke unless it was necessary, and every attempt he made to repair the relationship ended the same way, with me walking away. One evening, he knocked on my bedroom door. Can we just pretend none of this happened? He asked. I'll earn your trust back. I shook my head. You don't want to move forward, Ethan. You want to go back to the version of our relationship that only existed because I didn't know the truth. I closed the door gently. A few moments later, I heard him crying. The next week, he switched from apologies to guilt. He'd sit in the living room holding Noah, sigh loudly, and murmur things like, "I don't know what we're going to do," or "I wish someone cared," making sure I was close enough to hear. Once I realized those words were meant for me instead of the baby, I stopped reacting. When guilt didn't work, he tried forcing my hand. One morning, I found Noah's bassinet blocking the kitchen while Ethan announced he needed a shower and asked me to watch him. "No, it'll only be 15 minutes. I said no. "You'd really leave him crying? I'd rather you stop pretending this was ever my responsibility." He picked up the bassinet without another word. Every charge had been made through the TV in my living room. When Ethan got home, I showed him the transactions. "You rented all of these?" He barely looked at the screen. "Noah wouldn't sleep. I was going to tell you." "You were going to tell me after charging my account?" "They're just children's movies." "They're also my credit card." He shrugged. I didn't think it was a big deal. Without another word, I logged every device out of my account and changed the password. "You seriously locked me out? You used my money without asking. I would have paid you back." "With what?" Han had no answer. That wasn't the only problem. He stopped buying groceries, ran up the utilities without a second thought, and whenever I asked him to cover his share, he'd sigh and remind me he was a single father now, as though that excused everything. My attorney had already warned me to document every expense and every interaction, so I kept a detailed record. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let Ethan rewrite the story later. 18 days into the eviction notice, I came home to find his mother sitting comfortably in my living room, rocking Noah. The same woman who had ignored every one of Ethan's phone calls after learning the truth. "We need to talk," she said. "I agree." She smiled, clearly expecting I'd changed my mind. "So you'll let him stay?" "No." Her expression hardened. "My son made a terrible mistake, but everyone deserves forgiveness. I never said he didn't." "Then why throw him out?" I met her gaze. "I thought your family believed people should face the consequences of their actions." "That's different." "How?" "We're his family, and I'm not." She hesitated before quietly saying, "You loved him. Help him through this." I folded my arms. "When Ethan called after you found out the truth, did you invite him to move back home?" She looked away. "I needed to learn from his mistakes. So you wanted him to face the consequences, but you expect me to protect him from them." She couldn't answer. "You refused to take him in, stopped answering his calls, and told him to take responsibility. Now you're asking me to sacrifice my home because you're uncomfortable watching your own son live with the choices he made." "I'm disappointed in you," she finally said. "I'm disappointed in your son." She glanced at Noah. "He's innocent. I know. That's why he deserves parents who are honest with each other." She left without another word. 2 days later, Ethan walked into the kitchen carrying legal papers. "My lawyer filed for an extension. We think the court will give me another 90 days. I forwarded everything to my attorney, whose reply came less than an hour later. "Hein has no ownership interest in the property. This won't succeed." 4 days later, the court agreed. The extension was denied. Ethan stared at the decision for a long time before quietly asking, "So, that's it?" "Yes." For the first time, he didn't argue. He simply accepted that time had finally run out. The days before he moved were surprisingly quiet. He packed boxes, looked after Noah, and seemed to understand there was nothing left to fight for. Then, 2 days before he was due to leave, he asked for one last conversation. "I found Olivia," he said. "What does she want?" "Nothing. She called to tell me she's never coming back." He slid a folded paper across the table. "That's her address. You could expose her if you wanted." I pushed it back. "I don't." He frowned. "After everything she did? She's not my problem anymore." "You don't even want revenge?" I shook my head. "Revenge won't give me back the years I spent trusting you. It won't erase the lies or change what happened. All it would do is keep me tied to both of you, and I'm done living like that." For the first time since we'd met, Ethan looked completely defeated. Moving day arrived 2 days later. His mother showed up early with a van and a stack of storage bins. Neither of us had much to say while Ethan packed his belongings. The house wasn't filled with anger anymore, only the quiet exhaustion that comes when a relationship has already ended. Around noon, Mrs. Carter walked over to me. "He'll be staying with his grandmother." "I'm glad Noah has somewhere stable." She looked surprised. "So you really do care about the baby?" "I always have." "Then why didn't you stay?" I glanced toward Ethan as he secured Noah's car seat in the van. "Because Noah deserved parents who chose him honestly, and I deserved a partner who chose me the same way." She couldn't argue with that. A little later, Ethan carried out his final box and stopped on the porch. "I've had a lot of time to think," he said. "I kept telling myself I lied because I was scared, but that's not true. I lied because I wanted both lives. I wanted you, and I wanted to avoid dealing with Olivia. Every day I delayed telling you, I stole another day of your future." It was the first time his words didn't sound like another excuse. "I'm sorry, Claire." "I believe you," I said quietly. After a long pause, he asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" "Maybe, but forgiveness doesn't mean coming back." I gave a slow nod. "I understand." As he turned to leave, he paused one last time. "I really thought you'd stay." "I know," I said, "because you never stopped to ask what I wanted." He lowered his head, climbed into the van, and drove away. I stood on the porch until the vehicle disappeared at the end of the street. Only then did I walk back inside. The house felt different without the bassinet, the boxes, or the constant tension. Upstairs, I opened the spare bedroom we'd once planned to share for our future. It was completely empty. For the first time in months, that emptiness felt peaceful instead of painful. Living alone took some getting used to, but the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. I could come home without wondering what had been hidden from me, cook dinner without arguments, and wake up each morning knowing my life wasn't built on someone else's lies. As the weeks passed, I laughed more, reconnected with old friends, and slowly felt like myself again. "You seem happier," my best friend Megan told me over dinner. "I've lost about 190 pounds, I joked. "Ethan?" "And everything that came with him." 3 weeks later, I heard he'd moved into his grandmother's basement. His parents were helping care for Noah, but their relationship with Ethan remained strained. Trust, once broken, wasn't easy to rebuild. Soon after, the court established paternity and ordered Olivia to pay child support. There was no dramatic revenge, just accountability finally catching up with both of Noah's parents. Not everyone agreed with my decision. One mutual friend texted that I should have stayed until things settled down. I deleted the message without replying. Helping someone through hardship is one thing. Sacrificing your self-respect to cover their deception is another. Therapy helped me understand that difference. During one session, my therapist asked what advice I'd give my younger sister if she were in my position. The answer came instantly. I'd tell her to leave. Only then did I realize I'd been willing to show everyone compassion except myself. About 6 months later, I finally agreed to go on another date. His name was Daniel, an architect who never tried to impress me with grand gestures. What stood out was something much simpler. He was honest. If he said he'd call, he called. If traffic made him late, he texted before I had to wonder where he was. Those ordinary acts of consistency reminded me that honesty should never feel extraordinary. We took things slowly, letting the relationship grow through conversation, laughter, and patience instead of promises about forever. It was exactly what I needed. People still ask whether I regret leaving Ethan. My answer has never changed. I regret trusting the wrong person. I don't regret walking away. Today, my home is peaceful again. When I unlock the front door each evening, I know the life waiting for me is real. Ethan believed love meant staying no matter what. I learned that love without honesty isn't love at all. Walking away wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment I finally started living my own. I didn't lose my future. I reclaimed it.